So why are you watching this video? Well, most likely because you're intrigued by these two incredible machines. One is widely regarded as the best sports car in the world. The other one is, well, a laugh on three wheels. But numbers, technicalities, horsepower figures, they're just not important in this company. We've assembled this duo purely for the thrill of driving. So, I've got a green light and a Grand Prix circuit. Why am I standing here talking to you? So we're driving out of the pit lane of the BIC in the Porsche Cayman S. You may note the absence of the Morgan in this video, and that's because she proceeded to leak oil over a certain section of the track. So needless to say, people were not too pleased with the Morgan after that. So we have just the Cayman on the track, but I can tell you, you spend 2 minutes in the driver's seat of this car and there's absolutely nothing to be disappointed about. Some of the most memorable drives I've had have been from the driver's seat of a Porsche Cayman. The last time I drove a Cayman was a Porsche Cayman R, the outgoing generation Cayman. Manual gearbox, racing seat. It was a short drive, but suffice to say that the gentleman sitting next to me was none too pleased. It was long enough to scare the living daylights out of him. And a Cayman just does that. It sort of eggs you on. It urges you to push harder. It urges you to go that little bit quicker through the corner because it's so communicative. You're seated basically in the middle of this two-seater with the engine swung out behind you. Now, this new generation has electronic steering. And initially it received a little bit of criticism when the new generation Boxster came out. But once people have gotten used to it, and especially since the Cayman has come out, it's actually got pretty good reviews saying that this is probably the best electronic steering in the world. And when you've got a chassis that is so willing to play with you and a chassis that is so communicative, then you can't help but have some form of a telepathic steering. This particular car is 3.4 liters, flat six, mid-engined, 325 horsepower. With a Sport Chrono pack, it'll do 0 to 100 in 4.4 seconds. This particular car doesn't have Sport Chrono, so it'll do 0 to 100 in 4.6 seconds, but that's plenty fast as well. And there's just something about driving a mid-engine car. I mean, bear in mind that the best racing cars in the world, Formula 1 cars, are mid-engine. So there's some logic in the layout of a mid-engine car. And it holds true when you go down the road, because when you start pushing this car, firstly it only comes alive if you're driving it on a racetrack like the Buddh International Circuit. And when you start pushing it, you feel the weight of that engine behind you sort of steer the car. And it's not in an uncontrolled engine hung out the back or rear wheel drive driving you crazy kind of manner. It's really controlled, and if you push a little too hard, the car will understeer, so it's safe from that point of view. But if you really get into the groove with this car, you can actually feel the weight transfer of the engine right behind you, working with the chassis to make sure that the car stays completely online. Of course, in a mid-engine car, if you decide to turn the traction control off and you go in a little too hard into a corner, or you lift off a little too abruptly as you're turning into the corner, the front end will, or rather the rear end will come around on you. So you have to be a little bit careful. But the limits of this car are so high. They're so incredibly high. We tried doing a little bit of sliding for the photography, and I can tell you that there is no car that is more difficult to slide around the track than this car, because it's just so well behaved. It goes exactly where you want it to go. I mean, it really is telepathic even now. I'm not a big fan of the steering wheel. It doesn't give you the kind of feedback that the previous steering wheel gave you. I mean, there was just a real sense of what was happening underneath. Literally, every sort of groove in the rubber of the four tires, especially the front tires, was communicated back to the driver from the steering wheel. And that just isn't the case with an electronic steering. But there are advantages to it as well, and they're only going to get better as they go along. The gearbox itself is great. In this case, it's got the buttons on the steering wheel to help you change up and down. And I would opt at least for the paddles, if not for a proper manual gearbox, because really, I mean, this is a pure, proper sports car. And if you want the experience of driving a proper sports car, of being involved in the driving experience of a proper sports car like the Cayman, then you need to get yourself a manual gearbox. If you have 600 plus horsepower and you need paddles, or you need to leave it and drive and let the electronics do everything for you because you have so much power that you're overwhelmed, then it's a different issue. But if you really want to feel the car, you want to be a part of the car, you want to be an integral component in the driving experience, which is what this car urges you to do every step of the way, then you need a slightly more interactive interface as far as the transmission is concerned. Other than that, it's still a fantastic car. I mean, it truly is the benchmark. The 911 does have a little more drama, yes. It is the flagship, but this one just comes so incredibly close that Porsche is treading a very fine line between these two cars. That's why it has 325 horsepower, not 400. And a chassis like this, you could easily use 400 horsepower. But it's pretty good fun all the same. This is definitely a car that you want to drive every day just for the joy of getting behind the wheel. And then when you come out onto a racetrack, you can really explore the performance envelope of a car like this, because on the open road, you're just never going to be able to do it. The limits are just too high. The chassis balance is too good. But it's still a fun car to just experience the act of driving. I mean, this is a car where you get behind the wheel and you're in awe of the machinery around you, but you're also very much a part of the experience. This is an incredible everyday machine. That's hardcore. That's almost like a single-seater for the road. This is a beautifully trimmed out cabin, as you can see, and this is a car that you can drive every day and then go out on the weekends and just have the blast of your life. And that's what it's about, because you'll spend the entire week reliving that experience, and that's what cars like this are about.